What is up, beautiful people? Welcome back to another episode of Conversations with Creatives. I am so happy to have you guys here, and welcome to the new platform. We decided to transition over to YouTube and then be able to put clips everywhere else. But I thank you for following me. And today we have my beautiful friend Bianca as well. And I have to tell you such an amazing story about her. But I am so grateful to have you, Miss Bianca.
Yes, I'm so excited to be here and to be able to chat with you. Nobody's seeing double. This is just the same name. Last name's a little different.
But
Same
the
first
same
name.
love and the same light with God. So we are so happy to have you.
Absolutely.
So I have to tell you guys, I'm starting to do these things where I want to try stuff on my own. Yes, of course, we have friends, we invite them, we love that energy, but sometimes you got to do stuff on your own. And so a few months ago, I decided to go to a Kirk Franklin concert right after work, and I booked my seat, did my thing, and I took myself to dinner and went over. Come to find out, I'm sitting here and there are two seats beside me on both sides. I just happen to be kind of in the middle of the row. And originally, these two older women came to sit next to me, and I was, just shining my light, whatever, whatever. They end up being in the wrong section, right seat, but wrong section. So they leave. A couple more minutes goes by, and here comes the beautiful light of Bianca. She comes to sit next to me. Mind you, she came with two other friends, and they could have went in the row first to then be able to sit next to me. But she walked her way over. We sat, and of course, anybody sit next to you, you better say hello. Said hello, just quick little short conversation, and we were in our praise and worship with the music. Come to find out, Kirk Franklin says, turn to your neighbor and tell them what you're saying goodbye to. And at first, I was very like surface with it. I was like, just fears and worry and doubt and da 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 da. And she turns to me and says that she is releasing the pain that she's feeling from losing her father. And for me, as some of you may know, I have lost my mom in 2019. And I really rarely share just freely publicly without it being some form of therapy, if that makes sense. And sure enough, we look at each other, and there was this freeing moment that I felt seen, I felt heard, I felt loved. And come to find out, not only was everything aligned, here comes our names. I said, excuse me, ma'am, were you sent by God himself? Because I was looking for a friend like you. And sure enough, we ended up exchanging numbers, and we have developed this beautiful friendship, not only for a like-minded spirit and mindset, but also the pain that we have gone through individually that now we can share together. So, Bianca, again, thank you for coming on to this platform. My idea is to be able to have this free space to give flowers to the people who I love, but also to share their light and testimony of where they've come from to hopefully help somebody else. So, with that being said, would you mind telling me again to the people also of just where you started with this mission? You specifically focus on, as you quote on Instagram, making a safe space for people, but specifically little ones and teens. So I would love to hear what that entails, but also where that started from.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you so much for having me. I love this. And I love you. And I think, it was like such a God thing for both of us to just be there. And he knew we both needed this in our season. And
Yeah.
yeah, and even coming out of that season with dad passing, like he knew that I needed people that were going to be like-minded, that were going to be, like pillars when I need them to be pillars, and to
Yes.
be people that will understand things when I need them to understand. And
Yes.
so, yeah, such a beautiful gift. I currently am a counselor for middle schoolers. I've counseled younger ones in elementary as well.
Mhm.
And I also teach English. That's all the books. Thank you. We are about reading and getting our kids connected into knowledge. So I teach eighth grade and sixth grade, and then I counsel in between those classes.
Mhm.
And I'm currently actually doing an internship where I am counseling diverted youth from the judicial system. And so
Mhm.
there are students that have made some poor choices and gotten in trouble with the law. And so we give this opportunity for them to get counseled, to basically go to teen court in front of a jury of their peers.
Mm.
And their sentencing is a lot lighter than what the judicial system might give them. And we try to give them a sentencing that will be more beneficial for their growth, to basically take out that whatever the infraction is, it gets erased from their record if they
Mm.
choose to follow up. So it's a really cool program to be able to help kids that are, maybe in bad situations, made a bad choice.
Yeah.
And this is really like, that's probably my heart and soul is really connected to that. When I was 16, I went on an inner city outreach in New York, and
Mhm.
I just remember being there. We were just like helping people, feeding them, chatting with them, praying with them, encouraging them. And I can remember spending like a whole day with this little girl that was like on my shoulders, on my back. She just wanted to hang out the whole time.
Yeah.
And she lived in the projects in New York. And I just remember sitting there and looking over the whole group of people that were there and just thinking like, God, I just want to do this for the rest of my life. I just want to help people. And
Mm.
I don't know at what capacity that is, but I want to do this for the rest of my life.
I love that.
And so throughout my life, I'm 40 now, but throughout my teenage years, my 20s, my 30s, I was always connected in like youth ministry. My dad was a youth pastor, and so that was kind of like a family job. And just I would always see teenagers coming over to our house, and he would just kind of pour wisdom into them. And this was a man that wasn't really trained, but trained by the Holy Spirit. So he knew that people needed Jesus and they needed his love, and whatever he could supply for them, he would. And so kind of following in his footsteps, I
Yeah.
started to think, what do I want to do? Got into the field of psychology, loved it,
Mm.
and then realized that in order to really get into this, I need to get a licensing. And
Okay.
so now I'm in the process of getting my MSW, Master's of Social Work, and becoming licensed. Thank you. So yeah, that's that, so that I can help teenagers and kids. I think a lot of times people just, we're so far removed from that age that we
Mhm.
forget, what it was like to be a teenager. And I think that I love to be able to explain to little ones what's going on in their brain and why their brain is developing this way. And, teenagers are superheroes. They have all these hormones busting through their brain to develop
Mhm.
their brain, and they still have to function as humans, making good
Yes.
decisions as well as they can. And so I feel like my job and my calling is really just I love to educate people on like why things happen.
Yes.
And a lot of times, like, science is not removed from Christianity. It's not
Mhm.
removed from God. A lot of times we're just catching up with what he already knew, and
Hello.
we're putting names on it. So a
Yeah.
lot of times, we explaining to people what's going on, especially to kids, it gives them this like sense of their anxiety can go down. They can just have this like feeling of calm, like there's not something wrong with me.
Yes.
I can actually fight through this. And so then from that point, giving them tools, and that's a huge component, is giving kids tools on how to manage anxiety, how to manage stress. And yeah, so I think that is, I do that with anyone that is in my world,
Mm.
but specifically kids are in my world right now. They're in my sphere. And after becoming a counselor this last couple years, I think I've realized that like school counseling is really what I love to do. I love to be there in there every day, to
I love
see
that.
them every day. So
That's so special. You keep saying the love, and I love knowing that someone is in their purpose as well as obviously doing the job. But what is that feeling specifically to concrete decisions of I'm doing the right thing? Like with me, with my acting, there's this fire. I keep expressing it as like this fire that burns inside me, almost like an excitement when I'm doing the scenes or doing a scene class or what have you. So when you say you love it, what is that feeling that you're feeling to know you are doing the right thing?
yeah, I think that I really do feel like there is, God graces us, right? In the things that we're meant to do, he gives us so much grace. And so for outsiders, it can look like an overabundance. People look at my schedule and they're just like, you're crazy. Like you're going to burn out.
Mm,
It's just, you're taking classes, you're doing internship, you're working.
yeah.
But man, there's just this grace that he gives us to be able to hold on to that. And I
Mm,
think that that is actually it's my way of monitoring, like, is this really what I'm meant to do? Because if
mm,
there's no grace in it, and if the grace is lifted, then maybe that season is done to do that.
mm,
But I
mm.
really do feel like he gives us grace to do things, like
Yes.
in your acting, like, man, people can look at that and just be like, girl, you're doing too much. You're just
Mhm.
all over. But you feel like every time I do this, it feeds me,
Yeah.
it like fuels me, and I can sit back. I might be exhausted. Like physically, I can be done. And, even sometimes mentally, I'm pooped. But at the end of the day, I'm sitting there and I'm like, but I'll do it all over again tomorrow because I
Yeah.
love it. Like
Yes.
there's no feeling that's better than to just be like, I was built for this. Like my shoulders are big enough for this. And I don't
Mm,
know that I have that capacity for everything.
mhm.
Um, but I know that I have the capacity for this, and I have a grace for that.
I love that. Do you feel like that carries into your personal life as well to go through those challenges? It's that saying of, strong, it's hard to see strong people weak or strong people, don't get to those seasons of needing a hand or a shoulder to cry on. Do you feel like you carry that into your personal life as well and honor it the same way?
Now listen, my
Mhm.
therapist would tell you no, but I think that's my journey, right? We have a tendency of in our professional life or in the things that we do it so well. I can tell everybody under the sun, hey, you need to take care of you. You need to sit
Mhm.
down, you need to focus. But it's the hardest thing for me. And so, especially being in the field of caring for people. So
Yes.
you look at nurses, you look at doctors, you look at therapists, teachers, people in the school system that our whole life is dedicated to others. And I think
Mhm.
that it is something that eternally we struggle with feeling like it's not okay to put the mask on me first so that I can help the individual next to me. My life is about helping the individual next to me.
Yes.
But I think that is that's growth, right?
Mhm.
That's what we're meant to do, is get to a place where everything we're preaching to the choir, we're putting it in what we're doing as well. And
Yes.
so I think for myself, when it comes to my life, the biggest hurdles for me can sometimes be boundaries. And boundaries are
Mhm.
tough because I don't want to have boundaries. I don't want to put my phone on sleep or do not disturb, because what if someone needs me? What if
Mhm.
there's an emergency? And but the flip side of that is, if I don't get sleep, then they're not going to get the best of me when they have me during the
Yes.
day. So
Yes.
it really does become this thing of like having to pull back. And I think that, I joke about my therapist, but he's been so helpful to be able to kind of mirror and show me, hey, this is what you're saying, this is what you're experiencing. And to be able to self-reflect and kind of have that shown to me
Yes.
helps me be able to almost look at it like it is a client. Okay, well, that I can help someone else.
Mhm.
And so having people in your world that are honest, that will call you out on things and say, hey, you're doing all this for these kids, but you're not really doing it for yourself. And
Yes.
my sister is absolutely that person for me. She'll call
Kinda
me
like is.
out. I like it. So she's definitely like, you're pushing yourself, you're doing too much, you're not
Yeah.
taking care of you. And I think that the switch has really happened, I would say probably like right before Christmas, which isn't a long time.
Mhm.
But I've already seen a lot of like beneficial things in putting myself first in a lot of areas and making
Yes.
sure that I'm taking care of me. Like we only get one body. We
Yes.
only get one life. So if we don't take care of it right now and feed it well and give it the things that it needs, like we're
Mhm.
nourishing that one plant, that one animal, that one pet that we have. And I mean, something terrible could happen, and
Yes.
it would be a detriment for it to be like my responsibility.
Correct, correct. For someone who may not, because I hear you and I've been working on it, but for someone who has no grasp of what that even looks like, because we always associate everything you're saying like that as self-care. Okay, I'm gonna get my nails done, my hair done, not the inner work that you're speaking of. So for someone who may not be knowledgeable at all or have been exposed to any aspect of what you're speaking of, what would be maybe one or two things they can start with to open that door of those type of possibilities?
I think a lot of times we have a tendency of running ourselves ragged because we're just not self-aware. We really don't even know, you know, and the doing the nails, the going to the spa, the self-care that, society kind of pushes out there. I think that's such a cop out, and
Mm,
it's because you're not really sitting with what do you actually need and who is
mm,
the individual that you actually are. And I think that one of the hardest things that someone can do at times is to sit in silence and solitude and to
mm.
really just, I mean, try doing it for 5 minutes and it
Try
really
just doing it in the shower.
literally.
You're like, "Oh, I gotta do this or do that." You're not even just enjoying the
No, and your
moment
brain
of.
automatically goes to your list
Yeah.
of things that you need to do, and, "Oh, I've gotta do this," and, it's like the moment we give silence, everything wants to rush in, and so it
Mhm.
really does take, it takes a lot of discipline to be able to sit there, and I think that a lot of times we're scared of silence because
Yeah.
what am I gonna find in that silence,
Mm.
And what's gonna be exposed, and I think that it's a beautiful thing, but it is a terrifying thing, and I think
Yes.
that if we can begin to, that's probably the first place. If you aren't self-aware, if when someone says, "Hey, you need to take care of you,"
Mhm.
and you don't even know what that means or what that looks like in your personal life, then I think the first thing you got to do is just be quiet, sit
Yeah.
down, reflect, and journaling is a huge component for some people, having to write down what's going on in their head. And a lot of times, we think like, I journaled one day, I wrote in my diary one day, and it's like the more you do it, the more you're going to start getting to the meat and potatoes of like what it is that you actually need to resolve within yourself, the things you
Yes.
need to kind of put first. And so once that happens, where you actually recognize, man, these are some areas that I lack in. This is
Mhm.
not the individual that I want to be in this area.
Yes.
um, that's when you start kind of, if for lack of a better term, put together your self-care menu. Like, what is it
Mm.
that's going to go first? What is it that I'm going to work on? If I'm, and I think a great thing is to ask people. And I love this question that you can ask people: how do you experience me? Like, what is your
Mm.
experience of me? And I
Yes.
think that that is a very thoughtful way for people to say and tell you, like, man, you make me feel this way, you make me feel
Mhm.
that way. And there are going to be people that will say, my experience with you is great. I think you're a great person. But there might be some people in your world that are like, man, you don't really pay attention when I talk sometimes. I
Mm.
feel like this. I feel like you're distant. I feel like I'm the one that's always trying to reach out to you and you
Wow.
don't really reciprocate that. And so I think that when we ask people that we care and the people that love us how they experience us, it really can kind of help us manufacture what is the next steps for my growth and how can that happen. And
Mhm.
abundant ways of doing it, you've got to kind of find your groove. And journaling is not the end all be all for people. For some people, that's just not it, and it doesn't work. And for some people, for myself, I have to write stories, and I
Mhm.
love writing my stories and being able to express that in that type of way, in a more poetic way, because writing it down feels so like fake and like generated. Like I have to have something to
Mhm.
talk about, or else my journaling is useless. And so for me, if it's a story, I can take all that feeling and kind of funnel it into creating a picture. Even if no one ever reads it, I
Right.
read it and I can
Right.
see that picture and I feel that picture.
I love that. Do you feel like when you journal, it's or I'll say journal as an umbrella for
Yeah.
expressing, do you feel like it is important so that then you can almost look back on those things, almost like a I know for New Year's, I right before I came to see you, I was looking at old photos or just where I've come from just in that year. So do you feel like when you're doing that, should that help the progression or the reminder of how blessed you are and how progressive your life is, just in that short amount of time?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, in scripture, it's called like God told Israel to raise up an Ebenezer, right? And
Mhm.
it was like an altar, and it was meant to show them, every time you see this altar, you remember what you came from. You
Mhm.
remember where you were. And I think that that's a life lesson that anyone, whether you believe in God or not, it's a great idea to put something that's going to remind you of where you came from and
Mhm.
how far you've come. You know, it's hard. Days can get rough and can get
Mhm.
frustrating, and you can feel defeat. You know, defeat is a huge component of the human experience, and feeling
Mhm.
like I'm not hitting the mark, I'm not hitting the mark, I didn't do this, I didn't do that. But a lot of times we just forget like how far we've come in the process.
Mhm.
And to be able to sit, and again, not just like having journals is a beautiful way to be able to reflect and look back and say, man, that's where I was, and I'm not even that person anymore, you know? But having people in your world, you know, when you're at your lowest, and having those people sit with you and say, hey, I get it. And it's okay to be upset and sad about this moment and what's happening right now. But
Yes.
don't ever forget the person you were, because you're not that person anymore.
Yes.
You don't do
Yes.
those things anymore. And so I think that that is, and it, you know, a lot of times people can say things like, well, I don't have anybody like that in my life. Well,
Mhm.
man, you got to be that person to get that person. So
Absolutely.
are you being that person to the individuals in your world? Are you
Yes.
starting that? And so if that's what you want to see in your friendships, you
Mhm.
start bringing that out of those people.
Mhm.
I think that those are two like beautiful ways that we can always, and you know, family members can be that, friends
Yes.
can be that, even coworkers sometimes. Hey, you know, as I was a starting teacher, and man, just every single day feeling like I don't feel like I'm actually doing what I'm supposed to do. I feel like I'm
Mm.
a disservice to these children. And now, like 2 years later, you know, my teachers that work next to me, like, man, look at you. Like you've got your
Mhm.
lesson plans out, you've got this. And we want to focus on the negative so much
Yes.
sometimes we can't even see the positive of like where we've come from.
That's oh my gosh. I'm as you're saying it, I'm thinking of a moment just a few weeks ago. I was in a little dark space, just of uncertainty of the life. Like you said, life is difficult. And I had a friend of mine who called me, and she was in this doubtful spirit. Like, I don't know if they're gonna call. She was
Mm,
speaking of a job or what have you. And I poured into her such in a heavy way that after I got off the phone, I'm like, man, like if I'm doing it for her, I need to be doing that for myself and speaking light and love into myself, just like I did for her. Now, granted, I'm not sure if, it made her fully better or what have you, but at least in that moment, I reminded her, just like you said, of who she is, what all the awesome things she's already accomplished, and that this waiting season is just a chapter. It's not your full story or the end of your story. So that's definitely important to think about. It's like almost practice what you preach, or treat others the way you want to be treated, so that then when those times come, you've already opened that door to say, hey, I do need you, or I'm not just going to say I'm fine or I'm okay as a normal response to anything. um yeah, that friendship thing is definitely, with you and I, we have delved into each other in such a quick, heavy way, but the need was there and
yeah.
the conversation was had. I would love to know, what do you look for in those types of friendships, or be able to decipher which ones are maybe just work and we're cool and that's it, but then you also have the friends that you are comfortable with that's saying, hey, for New Year's we're going to do something a little bit different, versus just, oh, we get it, like,
Yes.
where do you decipher between those two friends? Because you don't have to tell me but once and I'm there. Okay.
Yes.
We did vision boards, we did prayer, we did everything, but it was only because we had already established that type of relationship. So
Yeah.
I'm curious to know your thoughts with that.
Yeah, I think that it friendships are hard, you know, and the older you get, they're harder. When you're a kid, you think like, man, and maybe this is why I love working with kids, because they're just like, hey, you've got green shoes, I got green shoes, let's be best friends. And
Yes,
just
yeah.
running around, you know, you're on the slide, I want to go on the slide. And so
Uh,
you know, these bonds are created as younger kids, and it's so important and beneficial for children to have that social environment to be able to grow and to learn things from each other. And I think something
mhm.
we miss out a lot is, as adults, we're meant to learn a lot of things from each other as well.
Yes.
And I think that man, there's people that are just going to be like, and I know we've talked about this before, but like there's a target, right? So it's like that bullseye target. And there's
Mm,
people that are just, those are your core people.
mhm.
And those are the people that you look at and you say, when I'm down, you're able to bring me up. And
Mhm.
when you're down, I'm able to bring you up.
Yeah.
There should never ever be, especially with your core people, there should never ever be this feeling like I'm carrying all the weight or they're carrying all the weight.
Mhm.
It's a balance. It's a good balance. It doesn't mean that you're never ever going to be the only one that carries the weight. It just means that it's not going to be happening every single day and you're the only one carrying the weight,
Correct.
right? So
Yes.
those core people, you recognize, like, if you have a cup, right, and your whole life and your time is in a cup, those people are going to get a pretty big chunk of your time, and they're going to
Mhm.
be the ones that, hey, they're actually on my, my favorites in my phone. So if I do have it on sleep, those are the people that will wake me up, and I'm willing to
Mhm.
drop everything for those people.
Yes.
And then as you go out, your circle gets bigger, but it's further away from the center where you're at. And so
Yes.
you have to begin to draw boundaries and just,
Mhm.
recognizing, like, these people are in my world, and I recognize that I give more than they do. And
Mhm.
I accepted that, and that's
Yes.
okay. But that doesn't mean they get the top tier of me. They don't get the best of me.
Mhm.
They kind of get a little bit later after that's given to other people. And I think that as you go out, you begin to recognize there are people that are just acquaintances in your life.
Yes.
There might be people that are just seasonal friends that are in your life for a season. And if we can be individuals that are like, that we look at friendships and we look at relationships and we take whatever God has for those relationships from that and say, okay,
Yes.
I'm so thankful. Even though this person might not be in my world forever, I'm so thankful for what they are right now or for what they were. And
Mhm.
we're able to see that, and kind of the more we can distance ourselves from that and allow ourselves to accept what we had, or and not kind of sit in it for too long. It's We're the ones that will come out healthy from that. I think
100%.
people that you need to look for are, you look for like-minded. I know I made the joke about the green shoes, but man, having someone in your world that has values and morals that are similar to yours, it really is just going to make you feel seen, make you feel understood, and make you feel known. And ultimately, that's what we as humans want, is for people to know who we are. And
Yes.
we want to feel known and feel seen. And so having those people, and the more we keep those people in our inner circle, it doesn't matter if, Joe, James, and whatever don't call me back when I call them. It's because I already feel known by these people. And
Yes.
and so if you don't give me that from the outside, that's okay. Like, you didn't have it in you, and that's okay,
Yes.
because I'm getting it from where I need to get it. So I think that having like-mindedness is a huge component, but don't keep it just to that. Like,
Yeah.
invite people in your world that are different, that think different, that that challenge things in you. And I
Mhm.
think that that's always healthy to have that. But the ones that are in the middle are probably going to be the ones that they protect you and you protect them, and they really are the people that help you continue to go,
Yeah.
so that you have energy to be able to give the people that are outside of that circle what they
I
need.
love that. Yes, I definitely believe in that because I have been in rooms or places that I'm like, I don't want to be here. I
Yeah,
shouldn't have been here because I'm so used to the pattern of saying yes. Or it's a friend who I've known all my life why would I not? Now you're acting different. Oh, you acting brand new. It's like, that technically may be the case from the outside, but if you knew my inner work of where I'm going, you
right,
would know like, hey, in the mornings, Bianca's got X, Y, and Z, so she's not going to be able to come out, and that's okay. Maybe I'll find something else. It's this weird thing where, some people know how to make that shift when someone gets married or has children. Like, our hangouts are going to be different. So it's like, why not treat it the same way when we are moving forward in our lives just as adults? And finding those growth spurts or chapters where we can say, hey, let's do something a little different. Maybe, we're not going to just go to a bar. Let's do other things that are still just as fun, quote unquote, in the sense of entertainment, but that we'll know, hey, Bianca's in this space. Bianca's going towards this. So either I'm going to gravitate with her or we're going to slowly pull apart just because we're not on, like you said, equally yoked in those morals and values. But man, what a battle that is to have to say no to certain things or certain people after some time when that's all you know. But
Yeah.
then in the same breath going into something new, being stretching out of your comfort zone the whole time your heart is beating out your chest, but you go
Yes.
home and you had a good time or you got to meet someone like you. Had I not gone to that
Right.
concert by myself, really, which is what you were saying earlier, the reason why I was going was because I was fixing some things within myself of,
Mhm.
my relationship with God and not having to be told where or how to serve him. I knew I like to bump with some real like good music. Why not Kirk Franklin?
Yeah.
But be hindered by, oh, so and so can't come or so and so can't go, then I don't go. Then I don't meet someone like you. So
Right.
I thank you for sharing that because I am really working on that within all aspects of my life because it just takes me further if I just try or step out of that comfort zone, whether it's something that is something I need to close the chapter on or something I need to step into. Either way is for our good in general. I love that. I will love to tap in just a little bit in our conversation with this storms of being now in this space that we're in currently. We did talk about it during the holidays a little bit where we felt those moments of sadness, but being able to use the tools and tips that we're talking about to push forward. In the same breath, I said about routines and discipline. What could someone who currently is either just had someone pass or someone who's sick and they are in that darkness, what could you say to someone that can't see the next? What could you say to them to help them know that we can get to the other side and be where we are currently to talk about it in a freeing way, but never dismiss it. That's as if it's the feeling's still not there.
Yeah. I think that I've recognized, in the field that I'm in, we're learning about every disorder, we're learning about everything, right? About psychology. There is no textbook that could ever give you a full weight of what grief is, and to
Mhm,
understand that, at the depth of what until you experience it, right? And
mhm,
I think that, to someone who is experiencing that and is walking through that, we're in a master's program, man. Like, we didn't even want to be in this program, but we're thrown into it and we're
mhm,
learning the depth of it, um, in no way that we wanted to. Nobody goes into this as like, well, let's do this as training. This is real life and this is our life. And so I think that, recognizing first and foremost that whatever you feel, whenever you feel it, the answer is yes. That is
mhm,
what you're gonna feel, and that's okay. And it's
mhm.
okay to feel the depth of sadness.
Yes.
Um, I've equated, like, when you're younger, you might lose a grandpa, you might lose a grandma, you might lose, someone in your sphere of life
Mhm,
passed away, and that's tough. But I think that, and I explain it, especially with dad. I feel like I tell people, like, it's like when a light goes out, right? When a light goes out on my street, I
mhm.
recognize it every time I drive by
Yes,
it.
I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
But if that light goes out, like, in my living room, I'm gonna recognize it every second of my day because it's right there, and it's always been right there. And so the effect, both are lights that go out, but the
Mhm,
effect is so much greater when that light is in my immediate circle. And so it feels like the world is a little bit dimmer. My life is a little bit dimmer, and everything I see is a little bit dimmer. And the proximity that that person is to you in relationship to you will determine how greatly that loss of light is going to affect you.
yes,
And sometimes it affects just when you recognize it because you drive down the street and you see that, "Oh,
mhm,
yeah, I forgot that person passed away." And that's, like, something that you recognize and you're like, "Man, that really does bring up some really sad things." But when
yes,
it's something that's in your house, it's every day.
Yeah.
You recognize it every day, and you're living in your house. So it's hard, and no one has the right to tell you that it's time to be over it, and it's time
Mhm.
to, start feeling better, and it's time that, and a lot of times I think people will say that because they want to feel better about the situation. I
Mm.
like seeing you so sad, and that makes me sad, and
Yes.
so, or makes me uncomfortable. So I think it's a gift when we have people in our world that understand it to the depth that we do. And so
Yes.
even like finding you was a gift
Yes.
because it was like, man, she gets it, and she
Mhm.
gets it at the same level as I get it.
Literally.
And I think that we do have to recognize that even though that light will go out and is out, there are always going to be new lights that will come in. They will never take the place of that light.
Mhm.
But the new lights in your life, so whether that's new relationships or that's children or that's work and
Yes.
experiences and things that happen in our life, like those new things are things that will bring new light, and they'll bring a new perspective in our world,
Mhm.
and the world does continue, and it's okay for us to hold on to this sadness and to see it at times. And I think that the struggle for people who go through grief at times is, if I don't feel sad about it, then it's as if I've just forgotten this person.
Mm. Mhm.
They don't deserve that. They deserve to be remembered. They deserve to be, you know, wept over.
Yes.
And I think that's true. My dad deserves to be cried over.
Mhm.
But it happens less and less as the time goes on, and you begin to find ways to remember them that, for myself with my sister and my mom, like we just start telling stories like, man, dad would have loved,
Mm.
and I think that even for you, like the accomplishments that we have, there's always going to be this like just this like surrounding sadness that comes around all of it, because it's like I'm gonna be able to celebrate these achievements when I walk down and I graduate. There's
Mhm.
gonna be a huge feeling of like, man, I've accomplished something, but
Mhm.
there's someone missing in all of this, right?
Mhm.
So
Yes.
I think that we do, to be able to continue, we do need to hold them, and we do need to hold them. The grief is going to follow us for the rest of our life. There'll never be a day that I won't think about my dad or
Yes.
forget him or miss him.
Yes.
But some days it gets a little easier, and it doesn't feel as fully sad all the time.
Yes.
And I think that we have to allow ourselves to be human, and
Mhm.
is a part of the human experience. Every single person on this earth is going to die at some
Yes.
point, and to be able to forgive yourself enough and like give yourself enough, permission to be
Mhm.
human and to have human moments, I think is the best way that we can begin to heal. Because I don't think it's ever going to be something that is fully healed, that we don't recognize it any longer, but
Yes.
there will be a scar. And in the same way that like scarred skin is sensitive when you
Yes.
touch it a certain way, and if it like hits something the wrong way, it kind of reminds you of that pain that whatever
Mhm.
happened. Grief gives us scars, and they're very sensitive areas, and so sometimes they're triggered and sometimes they're not,
Mhm.
and it doesn't debilitate us. And I think that that's something that we need to hold on to, is that this is never going to debilitate me. I'm never going to not be able to do something because dad is not here.
Yeah.
But there will be sadness with some of the things that I do because I remember him and I miss him.
Thank you. Yeah. A lot of times we just forget, or we feel like, the pain is too hard, or you just don't want to cry. You just don't want to be sad.
Yeah.
Like you said, to find the positive and all the awesome things. It's funny you said that because I was having so many pictures up of when, she was going through the treatments and things. And now through those conversations we've shared, especially talking to your mom and your aunt, it's like I should be putting up the pictures when I was a kid or when she was in her lovely or when she had her little, you know, school dresses on or whatever to see that and not be so reminded of just that one chapter of the entire time we've had together. So I hope that when someone listens to this, you know, they try to put that into perspective to say, yes, honor those times of pain, honor those times of sadness, but in the day to day, especially during the holidays or their birthday or Mother's or Father's Day, to do something that honors them in the positive light. You love to go to Disney, you know, I like to, you know, sometimes I've gone horseback riding or, you know, just doing something with dinner or being in my lovely to honor her versus to just sit and say, well, she's not here. So that's just what it is.
Yeah.
Because that will really stifle your growth in any aspect. And then, like you said, to during those triumph times that they may not physically be here, but to take that moment and, you know, within yourself to know that they're above looking at you and are very proud of you and would want you to continue. So
Yeah.
thank you for sharing that. Yes. Well, before we end, I would love to just give you the floor to give any tips or tools to just be able to, you know, like you said, find those safe space within yourself. If you can't go to the counselor, if you can't go to the therapist, you know, but to start creating that within yourself. My room has been that, and I've really been able to be comfortable here by myself doing hobbies and things that will keep me just in a better spirit to continue into this crazy world that we live in. So, what would you say to somebody who's just wanting to find that safe space?
Yeah, I think the greatest gift we can give to ourselves is just being the most authentic version of ourselves and
Mm,
to really be the person that God designed you to be.
yes.
And I think that when we hear that, if we hear preachers say that or we hear speakers say that, you know, we automatically think of these amazing people that have it all together and they've, you know, they're doing things and they're moving and they're going. And I think being authentic is recognizing where those pitfalls are in our life and embracing it so that we can fix it and we can get better. And people will avoid fake. That's just nobody want you don't want to be around someone fake. I don't want to be around someone
Right.
fake. Like, but a lot of times we work so hard to project what we think people want us to be or
Mm,
what they need us to be. And I think that what people need, what we all need is for everybody to just to know who they are and to
yes.
be that. Because if you are the individual that God's made you to be, man, that releases me to be the individual that God's released me to be. You know, like it gives us each permission. And I think that we hold this beautiful power to give people permission to be their authentic self. When
Mm,
we're just who we are, good, bad, ugly, it's not always pretty and it's not
mhm,
always great. But you know, when we're able to humble ourselves and recognize the areas we need help and the areas we need to change, and we begin to work on it, man, like we release other people to do the same thing. And I would encourage anyone that if that's the beginning of their journey of just sit
yes.
with it, you know, read books about people that have kind of gone through it. Look at people that you admire and
Mhm,
read about them, read their story, you know, watch a podcast, you know, listen to podcasts, do whatever it takes to kind of see like what has their journey been. If
mm,
someone really inspires you, there's books out about everybody,
yes.
and you're going to recognize really quickly that they're not just perfect. And there's probably a huge component of their life, something big happened, and they were able to harness something that got them through it. Because that is the experience of humanity. We all will go through something. You're not the only individual in the world going through something.
Mhm,
We all do, but a lot of times we try to like mask it with this like facade of like, oh, well, everything's fine and we're okay. And, you know, everything's going to be okay. And it's like, it's not. And the
yeah,
moment you let me know that you're not okay makes me feel like I can let people know that I'm not okay too.
yes.
And I think that that's the beginning of healing. And that's the beginning of our journey of getting healthy and becoming healthy individuals. But, constant self-reflection. That's what it takes. It takes looking and saying, "Man, I didn't like that about me. I
Mm,
didn't like the way I do that. I don't like the way people react to me when I do that. How
yeah.
can I change that? What can I do to change that?" And again, surrounding yourself around people that are gonna be honest with you. Don't get these yes men around you
Mm,
that's gonna tell you,
talk
"You
about it.
look good, you look good, everything's fine."
Yeah, everything's fine. You're fine. What's
No,
going
I got a booger hanging out of my nose and somebody needs to tell
on?
me.
Mm-mm. Mm,
And that's surround yourself around people who aren't intimidated by the individual that you become, that they're not
yes.
going to sabotage your world because you're growing. And this is something that can be hard sometimes with people is like, just find someone that's able to look at you and say, you need to keep on shining because I'm doing my thing and I'm trying to shine too. And I'm pumped for you and I'm excited for me at the same time.
That's
And
it.
finding those individuals in your life is really going to help you release the person that you're meant to be. And
Mhm,
the last thing is people have to recognize, I know you said it before, that it's hard to say no,
mhm,
but your no's make your yeses stronger. And that is a huge component of life is if you say yes to everything, then it doesn't hold the same value as if you say no to a lot more things. So when
mhm.
you do say yes to something, it means I value it and it's something that's very important to me. And I do want to give my energy to this.
100%. Oh, yes. Everything you said, I agree. Yes. Yes, yes, yes. Well, awesome, Bianca. Thank you so much for joining me today and just sharing your testimony and your story, your journey, and just these amazing tools to help us find that safe space within ourselves and finding that light in these crazy seasons we go through because it's not easy, but we can move with grace, like you said, functioning under grace. So, thank you. And to all of you who are watching, thank you for tuning in. Make sure you share, make sure you send it to someone who may be going through that season right now that needs that encouragement. And that is the point, like I said, of Conversations with Creators is to give a platform for us to remind us of the greatness that we are, but also to help somebody else to find that light within themselves. So, for joining, and we'll see you at the next episode. Thank you, Bianca. Love you.
Love you.
Okay, peace.